But can I say something about the BS3 wildlife group and the other wildlife groups within the city? It's very much, again, as the point's been made, it's about joining up. Birds don't live in gardens. They move from garden to garden. Hedgehogs don't live in, snails probably live in gardens, but almost nothing else does. They need to move about for food, for shelter, and for mates. And unless we allow that, they're going to continue to die out. I mean, the register of creatures over the last 50 years in the city is generally one of decline. Just to reassure you, I think rats are doing quite well.
Yeah.
And they're pigeons seem to be quite numerous, and gulls aren't doing too badly. But a lot of other stuff is already gone, or at least is very depleted. I can remember when I first came to Bristol, you could see starlings flying about.
Reverberations of starlings.
They're now a rare bird. The figures for hedgehogs, for example, nationally, I think they said that 30 years ago there was something like 30 million hedgehogs, 30 plus million hedgehogs in the country. Now they think it's barely a million, and that's for the entire country. Wow. So creatures which are common, and may even have the word common in their name, ain't common anymore. And where will we be in another 20 years? What we did in BS3 when we started is we decided we wanted to do two things. One was actually to do monitoring. What actually was the wildlife of BS3? We chose BS3 quite arbitrarily because we wanted a geographical area that people would at least understand. So that's where it came from, and other groups later on have chosen postcodes, partly because there's no internal structure. In the days when they were having partnerships, we probably would have gone for that geography, but that's out of the window now. So we wanted to monitor things, and we started off with a simple question. There's only a few of us, a dozen or so at the beginning, I guess, and we said, okay, question number one is how many species of butterfly can you find in BS3? And we basically asked people to look in their gardens, the park, wherever, how many species. We know that there's roughly 60 species on the UK list. So how many of those could you find in BS3? And nobody knew the answer to that. We do now, because we've been doing it for 6 years. And I've even got a report for that, this is our 2020 report, and the answer to the question is in there. I'll leave it in case you want to look the answer up, what the number is. We were surprised, it wasn't as bad as we thought. So we also do things like, we do an annual winter garden bird survey. A lot of people join into that, they just send stuff in, and a couple of us knock it together into a report. Somebody not me, actually sort of lays it out in an attractive sort of way. So I'll leave that there. We also commissioned a report on the ponds of Ashton Court. There are 15 ponds, easy to remember figure, and most of them are pretty useless from a wildlife perspective. The last time anyone spotted a great crested newt was 2019. We think they're probably gone now. One of the problems is dogs. It's not the only problem, but for very good reasons, dogs get injected with various chemicals because to keep the fleas off and so on and so forth. But the difficulty is when they go for a swim, the chemicals leak out into the water. So if you've got lots of dogs going for lots of swims, and if I was a dog, I'd want to go for a swim in the summer. It's not the dog's fault, but the chemicals leach out into the water and kill the things. Obviously there are other problems with the ponds. They're not really properly maintained, it's too expensive and so on. They tend to fill up and so on. The last thing in terms of monitoring, this is a newsletter that appeared to me 2 or 3 weeks ago now. It's issue 1 of what's called the Bristol Spider Web.
I loved it.
Yes, it's just a couple of people have knocked together a thing about spiders. And the line we gave them was we want you to tell us about spiders, but also we want you to rehabilitate them. This is the PR. We want people eventually to love spiders. Oh, it's a spider! Oh, lovely! You know, rather than cowering in the corner and so on. So that was one of the first things we did was to start people looking. So we've got some idea now of what we mean by the biodiversity investing. It's probably around about 30 to 40 birds that you can reasonably expect to see once or twice during the course of the year. A dozen mammals, probably half of them are bats. We did a survey at Women City Farm and they detected 6 species of bat. We think 2 or 3 amphibians. One of the things we noticed was if you just go to the parks, because the parks don't have ponds, no frogs, no toads, no newts, so you'd conclude there are no amphibians in Southfield, Bedminster and Wimmer Hill. But you start talking about people in their gardens. The gardens have got quite a lot of these things, you know. So we think probably 3 or 4 species of amphibians and 1 reptile, which is the slowworm. Apparently, people remember seeing grass snakes some while ago, but they haven't seen one in the last 5 or 6 years. That's the sort of thing. So we're beginning to get that sort of idea about what the population, wild population, of course it's very small compared to the domestic population. If you think in terms of biomass, probably 99% of the biomass of BS3 is humans, rats, dogs, cats. Well, rats are wild. Humans, dogs, cats, 99%. So we're talking about protecting 1%. The other thing that we're doing, and you've got some of it from William and Hartcliffe as well, and it's happening in other parts of the city, is obviously looking at how do you improve habitat. If you just monitor what you're recording is decline, you know, and until eventually they just disappear and there's nothing to monitor. So we're looking at habitat improvement. And again, that's where, in a sense, the idea of the urban nature reserve came in. In a sense, it was it's a propaganda move. It's an attempt to dramatise it, to say, okay, we want to make this whole area better for wildlife. So we turned the idea of a nature reserve on its head. A nature reserve is usually a space somewhere else in the country with a fence around it. Lots of people, generally speaking, kept out or certainly kept under control, and perhaps 1 or 2 rather special animals. So we turned it upside down. We said, okay, we're going to declare a nature reserve in an area which is dominated by humans, dogs and cats. Whether it's going to attract sufficient interest is yet to be demonstrated. What we did firstly was to try and get people to register, and we're still up for this, their gardens. Again, that's been mentioned, the importance of gardens. Square foot for square foot, gardens are probably on average more productive than almost any other space that you can think of. And they're also very good as a wildlife corridor. And there's lots of them, pretty small, but you add them all together and it becomes a big space. So we're trying to get people in their gardens to think wildlife and to register, so that in a sense they're signing up for it, as it were. So we're at our AGM later this month, we're going to give people a certificate if they've registered. So if you want a certificate, I can get you a registration form. It'll take you at least 5 minutes to fill it in. The most difficult task is to estimate the size of your garden. People find that quite difficult, apparently. An indictment of the English education system, if ever I saw one. The other thing, obviously, is also bigger spaces, parks and allotments, obvious. And some of the big parks have already signed up. Victoria Park has signed up, Greville Smythe, and others. And all we've asked them to do is what we're asking Tressa to do, which is to say they want to promote, to make a sort of pledge, but also to say, well, what plans have you got in terms of improving things? It doesn't have to be very complicated. It could be just one side of A4, just saying we think we want to create a wildflower meadow, or we want to stick a pond in, or whatever the things are that you want to do. And also we're encouraging people to monitor, because again we need to know whether we're winning or losing. We need to know whether is the robin something that we will only see on a Christmas card. I've talked to teenagers and they have never seen a hedgehog. That's criminal. I've never seen a hedgehog except on television. So these are quite crucial things that we neglected it too long. Anyway, as I say, I want to invite you to join everybody else.